For mortgage advice tailored towards your individual needs, contact PGB Mortgages today. Let them guide you through your home buying journey. Contact details are in the description. What's happening, people? I hope you're all well. So why didn't Sarah Boone take the plea deal? Sarah Boone was convicted of, I believe, second-degree murder for killing George Torres Jr. But she was offered a plea deal of 15 years for manslaughter. So she would have pled guilty to manslaughter, and she would have received 15 years in prison. So why didn't she take that plea deal? Why didn't she take that plea deal? There's a number of things to consider here. So the things to consider here is the person, in most, I want to say, at least in the UK and in the US as well, potentially. I don't know what the variation is from state to state, but I do know that at least in the UK, if you plead guilty, that can very often lead to you receiving a lesser sentence. So why didn't Sarah Boone plead guilty? Now, I'm thinking some of it is to do with not wanting to admit that she's wrong. I think some of it may be she didn't want to admit that she was wrong. Analysing her character through interrogation, analysing her demeanour, analysing the way she interacted with the detectives in her interrogation, I believe that she is someone potentially who doesn't like to admit that she's wrong. And so that could have largely gone into the reasoning for her that she didn't want to plead to the manslaughter charge. That could have been one of the reasons, her not wanting to, in a way, her pleading guilty to manslaughter is admitting that she's wrong. Also, I believe that Sarah Boone, analysing her body language, analysing her mental aptitude, I do believe that there is some potential that she may not have been thinking straight during this process. At least in her interrogation, she didn't look like she was someone who was thinking straight. And maybe that was also the case when she was being presented with the facts and the evidence and the potential of a plea deal, because this is someone who I believe she went through, was it 8 lawyers? 8 lawyers left her, I think. They didn't want to represent her anymore. She didn't want them to represent her. And was she on her 9th attorney? Correct me if I'm wrong, the 9th attorney. So clearly her thinking may not be in line with most other people's thinking. And that's not always a bad thing. But in this case, it may have very well been a bad thing. I think that maybe her mental aptitude may not be in a way that she would have been thinking on the lines that were within her best interest, even though she thought that she might have been thinking in her best interest. So maybe mental aptitude was something to do with it as well. I also think that ego may have been a part of it as well. So if her pleading to anything is almost her admitting defeat, and that would have been a blow to her ego. I think that might have been part of it as well. So it's actually quite interesting analysing the psychology of an individual, because, we can always analyse a situation on the outside and say, yeah, this would be the easiest thing to do. This would be the thing that makes sense. But when you're in the situation, often it can appear a little bit different. And I think it would be very interesting to know what Sarah Boone would advise someone. If Sarah Boone was a free woman and she was on the outside and she was presented with a case like the one she's in, what would she recommend the defendant do? Would she recommend the defendant pleads guilty to manslaughter, or would she recommend that the defendant takes it to trial? That would be interesting to know. But analysing the facts of the case, when you see the evidence that the state had, the video, and you see the potential of a life sentence, I think that most people, most content that I've watched, most people seem to think that it would have been advisable for her to take the plea deal, because she takes the 15 years. She's already served about 4, so that's down to 11 for credit for time served. And then if she did 85% of her 15 years, then potentially she could have been out in 9 to 11 years, maybe 9 to 11 years. So I'm thinking that, you know, 9 to 11 years for what she did is almost, you know, I don't want to say it's almost getting away with it, but she would have got off very lightly, in my opinion, if she took that plea deal. But ultimately she didn't, and she now faces sentencing next month. And I don't, you know, I'm an outsider looking in, but when I look at the facts of the case, when I look at the evidence and the power of the evidence, and I suspect that the sentencing may be on the higher end, put it that way, but I'm just an outsider looking in. Anyway, let me know what you think about Sarah Boone. Why didn't she take that plea deal? Let me know. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, hit the notification bell so you get a notification when I make a new video. If you appreciate my work and want to leave a donation, there's a link for that in the description. With that, enjoy the rest of your day. See you on the next one.